two different elements. Two different elements. Now, if I say one house is taller than the other, this is this comparison. One house taller than the other. Or if I say one student is more intelligent than the other. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about this comparison. But if I want to compare the skin color of two different students, I use this one. Okay, so I say Moses is fair while Shola is dark. You understand? This one is the same. You are comparing the same item, but here you may be comparing the same item, but they are quite different from each other. Comparing the same item, but comparing their degree. This one is bigger than this one. It's the same item, but different degrees here. Okay? Can you see my cursor? The same item, but different degrees here. But here, maybe the same item, but in different form. Okay? So, or better still, you are comparing the two different character traits. This one is the same trait, but here is two different traits, two different characteristics. So if, for example, we are saying, let's say, Tola is very cool-headed, whereas his brother is very boisterous. Okay? We are talking about two different attitudes. Okay? So it's more of a comparison, but because they are not the same, it's different from saying Kola is more peaceful than his brother. You are the same level of peace, but one is higher than the other. You are comparing degrees to which one is more than the other. But this one is comparing these two different things. Kola is boisterous, while his brother is peaceful. So two different traits. I hope you understand, because I'm really do you understand? I think at this point, if I can see your video, I'll get your feedbacks by your nod. Okay, but I can only see two people's video, but it's okay. It's all good. Some people are very good with their privacy, so no voila. I just don't sleep out on me. It won't be too good for both of us if you sleep out on me in the class. All right. Okay. Okay. So I have somebody's hands raised. Okay. Can we have your question, Mrs. Busari?
No, I'm fine. I'm just trying to let you know that I'm not sleeping.
Oh, okay, good. So that we don't bring pain to the class. Anybody that is sleeping will just start singing, "What are you doing? I am jumping. What are you doing?" It's all good. So let's go on. All right. So gerund is starting sentences with the present continuous tense form of a verb. So walking every morning is another form of exercise. Hardly would you see people make use of starting sentences with ing, with the ing form of a verb, but it's one of those things that shows that you are an advanced user of English language. All right. So attributing a lot of accolades to his son makes him behave sometimes, misbehave sometimes. So so attributing a lot of accolades to his son makes him behave sometimes. All right. So that's ing starting a sentence, gerund. So if you from the flip side, you have two infinitive. People typically don't start sentences with two infinitive, but if you do that, it shows that you are an advanced user of English language. So this is starting sentence with to and a verb. So to err is human, to forgive is divine. All right. To eat a bar before work is an invitation to a dull morning. To eat a bar before work, is an invitation to a dull morning. All right. So that is to infinitive. Making use of to infinitive in your work is an indication to that the fact that you are an advanced user of English language. You should be able to use that when you're speaking and when you're writing, and of course, whenever they are using that at you in your writing, in your listening and reading, it shouldn't be much of an issue, because you could have to err in the passage, and you could have erring or committing an error in the question. To err in the passage, committing an error in the question. So you have to be very sure that you understand some of these things, because IELTS is good and full of um, um, booby traps. They've set traps for you and they expect you to walk right into it. Because if they don't set those traps, how would people continue to come back to give them 70-something thousand every now and then? All right, so let's move on. All right. So wide range of structure is number 10. Wide range of structure is number 10. Now, IELTS is expecting that you make use of different structures in English language, different structures, sentence structures in English language. So typically we have 4 different sentence structures. We have simple sentences, compound sentences, compound complex sentences, and complex sentences. Now, IELTS expects that you should make use of all of them, but the further down you go, the higher score, the higher the use of which will give you score. So let me rephrase that. If you use this all through, you will not get as much score as if you use a combination of all 4. I hope you understand. If you use only simple sentence, you will not be scored well as much as if you are going to use all this in an essay. So it is very, very important for students to come up with different, what's it called now? With different sentence length, sentence structure. So length, different lengths of structure, different. Now, teaching us all the things we are teaching ourselves is one way to be able to write some of these sentence structures that may seem a bit difficult. Okay, all right. Don't mind this this part. This was a class, one of those classes we had that we have this. So let me just copy and paste somewhere else. Okay, so that okay, oh okay, I have to undo that. Okay, so now students should be able to you know, make use of some of these things in their essays, because that is one of the things. These are things that show that they are actually good at what they are okay, they are meant to be doing. So let's move on. Let's move back to where we were. Okay, so sentence. So now the number 11 is lexical resources. Vocabulary. IELTS expects that you don't use typically common vocabularies. They're expecting you to use advanced level vocabulary. Meanwhile, they are not expecting you to use some very, very advanced level words. No, you don't. For you to use, some of us are aware of GRE. You don't have to be able to use some of these very tough advanced level vocabulary as used in GRE in IELTS for you to score even a 9 or an 8 or a 9. You just need to move up a little ahead of the typically common words. You can't say, for example, somebody who says I am very hungry cannot be scored higher than somebody who says I'm quite famished. Now let me say this here, that there are some words that I'm not expecting my student to use. Maybe you should put it as a note somewhere. Note that I'm not expecting to use quite. They are very, I'm not expecting to use very, sorry, very. Very is commonly used and is quite rampant with when people use very. Very is rampant. I'm not expecting you to use very. So instead of using very, I'm expecting you to use highly, or quite. So quite famished, extremely famished, highly famished may not go there, may not go with that, but highly important. Instead of saying very important, you say highly important. All right. So don't use but. But is commonly used, is a common word. Don't use because. You can use because of this, okay, but stay away from just using because ordinarily, just because I went to the market because I had to buy a few things. No, I think it's better if you said I went to the market. Um, uh, okay, I went to the market. Okay, because of these, I went to the market. Something like that. Don't use because just ordinarily like that, but you can say because of this, and it's a lot more advanced than just using because. Don't use but. But is you have several examples of words that you can use to do contrast rather than use but. You have several words that you can use as contrast rather than use but. So stay away from such words. So she was afraid, for example, would not be scored as high as she was shocked, frightened, or overwhelmed. Okay. So look at, for example, so IELTS is expecting you to use advanced level diction, not the everyday ones, not the everyday ones, not the ones that you are typically used to using. So look, example number 3. Let's make a lot more sense with that. It says, look at the mistake you made me do. Look at the mistake you made me do. That one is just simple, but look at the advanced form of rendering it. Observe the manner of error you caused me to commit. Is somebody who wrote that way will score better than IELTS. So if you look at some of these words, you find out that these are not words that these are words that you are familiar with. They are not words you are not familiar with. They are words that you use every day. So IELTS is not asking you for something new. They are expecting you to just be extraordinary. Don't go ordinary by using the words that are just everywhere. Everybody's using it. Even the man on the street who went to school is using it. No, you should use a bit advanced level of vocabulary in your in explaining yourself in writing. And if you do not have those level of understanding, then it becomes an issue for you to really, really read and understand. That's why I was saying that in your writing, uh, um, what's called now, in your reading, you should read a lot. Read a lot. Take books that are not, you know, that were written in advanced level grammar, and read and read and read a lot. Um, Sometimes when people ask me what kind of books should they read to develop themselves, I'll just typically say go for foreign authors. Foreign authors, because go for foreign authors. Basically, don't stay with our authors here. Only few people have gotten to that level where I think, sorry, is my opinion anyway, where I think that you should be able to learn one or two things from their work. So I'd rather that you go for foreign authors. So let's move on here from synonyms. IELTS is very big on synonyms. They are very, very big on synonyms. They make use of huge amount of synonyms. They are expecting their student to have a stockpile of synonyms in their head. In fact, the reason why we cannot write as much notes on synonym here is that it's one of the major pillars of IELTS. Yes, you should be able to understand and make use of other words, all right, other expression to replace whatever it is that you're saying or whatever it is that you have said before. And IELTS will also use it at you in your listening and your reading. For example, if they say at the back of the house, you can just oppose that or replace that with behind the house. It's the same thing, but back and behind, okay, the same thing. So you should be able to do that as much as possible. So IELTS is very big on synonyms. So an advanced level of synonymization, so to speak, is paraphrasing. IELTS also, it requires that you do a lot of paraphrasing. So now there are several ways to paraphrase. Paraphrasing is changing some or almost all the words of a sentence to their synonyms. And in IELTS, these words are usually scattered quite widely away from each other, which makes them look nothing like the original sentence. I hope you understand what I just read to you, or I hope you understand what you're seeing. This is changing some or almost all the words of a sentence to their synonyms, and in IELTS, when they change those words, they scatter them far away from each other. All right, that is in the passage. You see the question first, then you go back to the passage and you find out that this was supposed to be sequential, but they are not. You just scatter them far away from each other, and then it makes you start looking for what is not lost. Okay, so you should be able to paraphrase, and you should know when they are paraphrasing, and you should be able to clamp down on any sentence that have been paraphrased. So, for example, let's see, there are actually 3 types of paraphrasals. Okay, I just wrote 2 up there. Okay, let's take a look at this. Walking every morning is another form of exercise. The first paraphraser can be the one where we change the position of all of this. We change the position outrightly. Let's say we said the sentence is walking every morning is another form of exercise, and we can have another form of exercise is walking every morning. You are paraphrased. Okay, another form of exercise is walking every morning. You have paraphrased like that. But what about taking a walk each morning? Because you have changed it now. You have changed walking to taking a walk each morning, every morning is another type, another form. I couldn't probably come up with an example, a synonym of another. Okay, but I repeated it. Another type of physical fitness routine, which is physical fitness routines, is an example or a synonym of exercise. Okay, all right. So that is an example of, and example 2 of paraphrasal. So we see that we have just changed some words that can be changed there, and we left the one that cannot be changed. Some people, in a bid to change words, they change the meaning of what they are trying to say. Okay, so please, if you know that if you change a word or you couldn't get a perfect replacement for a word, just leave it, bring in that word back into your paraphrasal. Okay, number 2, number 3, this will be the 3 types, the third type of paraphrasal, where you do the first 2 together. The first one is changing the position of the same set of words, right? The second one is changing these words to their synonyms. Then the third one is using part 1 and part 2 together, which is changing the words and changing their position. Type 1 is changing position of the same words. Type 2 is changing the words to their synonyms. And type 3 is changing the words and changing the position of the words. So another type of physical fitness routine is taking a walk every morning. And that settles your the third form of paraphrasal here. Okay, I hope that is understood, and I hope we can move on. Okay. So the next one is IELTS frowns at overgeneralization or even generalization. IELTS does not want any of their students or anyone who would be marked high, who will be given high scores to overgeneralize. For example, if the government spends more money on education, this will no doubt bring about a reduction in the number of out-of-school children. Now, what is overgeneralization? It's saying that every time a line of action is taken, that line of action would definitely lead to a particular result. So the line of action we're talking about here is spending more money on education. And this writer is saying that once more money is dedicated to education, it will no doubt bring about reduction in the number of out-of-school children. This is not the kind of sentence you want to make in your IELTS, because you would have overgeneralized. So this is overgeneralization, and this is no overgeneralization. So how do you expect to rephrase this? And it goes, if the government spend more money on education, this might, because you are saying it's not all the time. Is it all the time where they spend more money on education? Oh, come and do it in Nigeria. Is it all the time that they spend more money on education that something good happens in that particular area? No. But there is a likelihood, there is a probability that that money spent will bring about a change in outcome. Okay, sorry. I just saw your this thing now. Your your comment. So sorry, quickly go back to 12. 12 is very simple. So quickly take that and let's move on. Sorry. Are we
Thank you.
done? Yes. Thank you. All right. So let's move on. Let's move on. Okay. So now overgeneralization. If the government spend more money on education, this might, or this is likely to, or this tends to, this will possibly, this will probably bring about a reduction in the number of out-of-school children. So any of this can work to help you to stay away from overgeneralization. I hope that is clear. So let's move on. Now, number 16, okay, number 15. IELTS expects that you don't overuse a particular word. Now, I was telling some students on Monday that IELTS said made use of several ways to inform us that they don't want repetition. They use several ways to say they hate repetition. And number one is overuse. Overuse is overusing one word more than, okay, overuse is using one word more than once, especially coercive devices. Although can be interchanged with, however, can be interchanged with nonetheless, especially can be interchanged with in particular or particularly. So you can't use, every now you want to do contraction, no, to do contrast. You can't just always be using although in that same same sentence, in that same essay, and you're always using although, paragraph 1, although, paragraph 2, although, paragraph 3, although, when there are other synonyms that you can use. That's what typically IELTS considers as overuse. Don't overuse. Use their synonyms. So if they say no overuse, another way they've told you that they don't want repetition is they say you should use synonyms. Another way they said they don't want you to use synonym is maybe probably down there. We see as we go on. Now, number 16 says no underuse of words. This is when you don't use a word correctly. That's why I want my student to really, really read hard. In fact, if you are thinking that I'm going to spoon feed you and teach you everything, of course, I'm going to teach you. Yes, I'm not a teacher by training, but I'm a teacher by gifting. All right. So I'm going to teach you everything you need to pass. I'm going to spoon feed you as much, but I'm going to drill you as much as I spoon feed you. If I spoon feed, in fact, twice as much as I spoon feed you. If I spoon feed you 100%, expecting a drill of worth of 200%, that's who I am. Okay. So it's not going to be a field day. I can see Ms. Joseph like smiling. Working with me is work. It's serious work. It's not one of those teachers that will release and expect that okay, it's not moving out of this country is not a child's play. So you've got to work. So I'm expecting my students to read and read and read and read and dig the internet for some of these things. So you can't underuse words. You have to know a word very well before you use it. A man, especially being very learned, that's an example of overuse. A man, especially being very learned, has not been able to turn his knowledge into a life of active prosperity. So, especially is wrongly used here, but it's better which you use despite. The man is despite being very learned. You can see it flows better. The man, despite being very learned, has not been able to turn around his knowledge into the life of active prosperity. All right. So you should know every word you are using, else you'll be scored low. All right. So move on. Let's move on. Punctuation. Punctuation is using proper, accurate, and adequate punctuations. That's IELTS is expecting you to. Of course, every language requires punctuation, and punctuation could be the reason why some people may not do well because they are conveying a different meaning from what they actually meant. So it is very, very important for you to use punctuation. Now, no repetition. That's another word. No repetition. They are saying no repetition. Don't repeat. Try using synonyms instead of repeating words. No repetition. Number 19, no irrelevant details. Whenever you are writing or you are speaking, don't veer off too much from the topic. Don't bring in irrelevant details. Always make sure that your work has this cohesion, has this closely knitted approach to it, so that you don't bring in irrelevant ideas and details into your work. So number 20, I think we want to let's keep that in view. So that number 20, clear referencing and substitution. Now this is another opportunity, another item that indicates indicate that IELTS is against repetition. Clear referencing and substitution. So to avoid repetition, sometimes the following can be used to replace other words. For example, personal pronouns, he, she, they, it, you, and the rest of them can be used instead. You know how pronouns is used instead of a noun. Then you have demonstrated pronouns, these, that, those, and those. These, that, these, and those. So for example, you have individuals should work with the government to get rid of indiscriminate dumping of refuse in water bodies and on the roads, as this is capable of bringing about perennial cases of flooding in urban centers. The word "this" that is in yellow markings is referring back to indiscriminate dumping of refuse in water bodies and on the road. So if you don't use that, you are most likely going to have to repeat the whole of that one in green marker again in the place where you have this. So individuals should work with the government to get rid of indiscriminate dumping of refuse in water bodies and on the road, as indiscriminate dumping of refuse in water bodies and on the road is capable of bringing about perennial cases of flooding in urban centers. You can see it sound awkward. So IELTS is expecting that you replace that with this. All right. Okay. All right. So I hope you've gotten that, and we can move on. So dear, clear referencing and substitution, you can always refer back to a particular item in the sentence with these, that, those, and then these. Okay. You should read up on how to get this done. So clear and good paragraphing. IELTS expect that you do clear and good paragraphing. Now in IELTS, I frown at using the usage of indentation type of paragraphing. You know that part where you leave a space when you want to write a paragraph, you leave a space before you write the first word. That is not acceptable here. You write your sentence from the margin. Your sentence all your sentences must start on the margin. All sentences must start on the margin. Then how do you now indicate that you are writing paragraph? You leave lines in between paragraphs. Start all your sentences on the margin and leave a line in between paragraphs to indicate that you're starting another paragraph. And you know, a paragraph is a group of sentences that have a main idea. So you should be able to, when writing, understand that this is a paragraph, all right, and so that you don't mix up things. All right, now this is your assignment. I hope we've all gotten down the notes. Your assignment, here comes your assignment. And if you have not turned in like Auntie Rosemary now, sent in an assignment, wasn't clearly scanned to me. So you have the opportunity to get it done and get it done properly. Now, it's funny, but I will say this, Auntie Rosemary, when you said you have left the house and you couldn't snap it back at me, I just smiled. I was like, I wanted to respond and say, well, if it does, if your assignment does not get to me before class, then we'll consider that you have marked your assignment, because you were saying you were proposing that you're going to send it to me the next morning. So by the time I have treated it in the class, there's no way I would have time to do that in the morning. You know, IELTS and teaching online is not the only thing I do. Okay, some other people here know who I am in other climes. They know that IELTS teaching is not only what I do. So, so I'm a very, very busy person. So even if I'm not um, in a class, I'm somewhere doing something very, very important. So, and I have actually highlighted my time to be able to look into things, and I'm expecting that my students are able to help me to manage that time. So the first assignment, these are your assignments, okay? The first assignment is that you write from the internet, write huge notes, a lot of notes from the internet, and read the notes on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 20. If you can read on all of them, all those ones that I did not bring there, I'm assuming that you should understand them. So you should write this assignment. Number 2, write 10 sentences with at least, okay, let's make it 5. We're going to make it 5. Write 5 sentences with at least 5 vital signs. 5 sentences that is 5 vital signs. So how do we go about that? This is it. Although he is from a rich family, okay, whose members are top officials in multinational companies and are more than ready to assist him, he lives like a pauper due to his refusal to be helped by them. How do we go out? So let's look at the breakdown. How do we come about this being 5? Coercive device, although 1, this coercive device, and up to this point, even